Welcome to the Kansas Reflector's weekly update. My name's Clay Wirestone. I'm the opinion editor.
I'm Editor-in-Chief Sherman Smith.
And we are taping this actually on the Monday, a little bit later than usual. But Sherman, it's been a busy time.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to go down to Park City Saturday evening to talk to the community pride group there, one of our town halls, and it was a great conversation. And then Sunday, I was at the film festival to watch the Kansas premiere of Seized, the documentary about what happened after the raid on the Marion County Record.
And also on Sunday, Kansas Senator, Kansas's U.S. Senator Roger Marshall appeared on Meet the Press and made the announcement that some of us were very curious about hearing far earlier.
Yeah, clarified some things here by saying that he will not take a position in the Trump administration prior to election or for the first 2 years if he's reelected in November. This is important because, as we've been noting, there's a concern here with language they put into Senate Bill 105 last year in the legislature, which would have allowed, it allows if Roger Marshall were to leave this seat, the U.S. Senate seat, between May 1st and October 2nd, it would allow Republicans to try to put another Republican in office and delay the election for 2 years. As we've reported and others have reported and pointed out, this is not constitutional and almost certainly would not work. They could have tried it, but that was the plan in the law, a thing that really exists that they passed for that purpose. But Roger Marshall has put this to rest, as he could have done from the start, by saying he will not take a position in the Trump administration.
And to be clear, we also asked Roger Marshall's campaign about this, as did the Kansas City Star, and in both cases, we received kind of non-denial denials, just a simple statement that he was running at present.
Yeah, it's one thing to say, I'm running for re-election, as he told us when we reported on it. It's quite another to say, I'm running for re-election and I will not leave this position or leave this race for any reason.
It's also important to note, I think, that between the way the Meet the Press host characterized this law, the way that the Republican Party kind of pushed back, what's interesting is throughout these conversations about SB 105 and about what Roger Marshall might do, no one actually took issue with the core point of our reporting and commentary from the beginning, which is this is what the law does. And this is what the law is supposed to do, is to allow the delay of an election for 2 years.
Yeah, nobody has disputed what the law says. Nobody has pointed to anything inaccurate in any of our reporting, or as far as I know, the Kansas City Star's reporting on this.
And, it's important to note, too, that the Kansas City Star wrote a story about this yesterday. Reporter Matt Kelly got a hold of some other folks, including the Senate Federal and State Affairs Chairman, Mike Thompson, who actually said in an interview that he that he thought that the 17th Amendment, which allows for the direct election of U.S. senators, was wrongly decided and that U.S. senators should instead be selected by state legislatures.
I believe he called it a big mistake. He's the chair of the committee that actually produced this bill and added that language into this bill.
So, I think it is clear from all of this that while it, at this point, because of what Senator Marshall said just on Sunday, that it seems, at least at present, unlikely that he would take a post in the Trump administration, it certainly seems that, the law was passed for that effect and, there was presumably interest at some point in doing so.
I think the concern still is that this law is on the books. I mean, we could be in this situation 6 years from now, 8 years from now, who knows when, 2 years from now, actually. Theoretically, something like this could happen, whether it was planned or not. If, God forbid, there was a death in office or somebody left for something other than a presidential appointment, this law still exists to allow somebody to delay an election by 2 years.
Well, and when senior reporter Tim Carpenter was doing his original reporting on his first piece on this, we did hear that the Secretary of State's office was preparing guidance about the law, so I suspect that will be kind of the next true shoe to drop in this situation.
Yeah, perhaps that guidance will acknowledge that the U.S. Constitution trumps the state law.
And if not, it will be curious to see if lawmakers try to take this up again in subsequent sessions, acknowledge that this is an issue, or just leave it on the books. And we've had problematic laws be left on the books before.
Yes, there's any number of unconstitutional laws get passed each year.
Well, or laws that subsequently become unconstitutional that are then never repealed.
That too, yeah.
So moving on into the lovely world of elections and campaigns, we saw a fairly large, credible poll out this past week looking kind of at the Democratic side of the ledger.
Yeah, this is a poll commissioned by an outfit called Capital B that does write about state government and politics in Kansas. They were curious about what was happening in this Democratic primary, and so they commissioned the poll from a polling firm based out of San Francisco, I believe. They specialize in doing polling for Democrats. So they polled, I think, a little over 1,000 people, which is a high number for a Kansas poll, whether it's a primary or a general election. And what they showed in both the governor's race and the U.S. Senate race were clear frontrunners. In the governor's race, the poll showed Cindy Holscher, state senator from Overland Park, has 37% support. Ethan Corson, who's also a state senator from Johnson County, endorsed by Governor Laura Kelly and former Governor Kathleen Sebelius and Planned Parenthood and unions, has just 10%, according to this poll. And the newcomer to the race, Overland Park Mayor Kurt Skoog, has 7% in this poll. We'll get to the Senate side in a second, but do those numbers surprise you, Clay?
I mean, yes and no, I think is the short answer. I think on one hand, we've seen a lot of efforts by Governor Laura Kelly and kind of what I might characterize as the Democratic Party apparatus in Kansas to line up behind Ethan Corson. Kelly went as far as to do a campaign appearance and say, hey, if you guys trusted me to be your governor, trust me essentially to endorse your next governor, and please select Ethan Corson. He certainly has raised, I think he's raised the most money on the Democratic side. So certainly there's a lot of pieces that are falling in place for him. So in that sense, I guess I'm surprised he's so far behind. On the other side, I will also say that based on my interactions with folks, kind of activists and advocates in Kansas, there's frankly more excitement around Cindy Holscher's run. I wrote a column about juice and who's got the juice in various campaigns in Kansas, and I think, comparing the two of them, Cindy Holscher's got more juice and has for a while.
And this is consistent from what I've seen at campaign events at the debate a couple months ago now, which was just Holscher and Corson. There's a lot more enthusiasm among Democrats for Holscher right now. I think it's still too early to say what impact Skoog will have on this race. The other thing to note is the poll was conducted the first week of June. That was before Ethan Corson made $1 million ad buy for his campaign. And that's, of course, the big thing hanging over this is it's still too early to get into the real heart of the campaign season, which is when all the money gets spent. The back end of June into July, you get that early voting period. So there's a lot more money to be spent here. That's where the support from the party apparatus, from Laura Kelly and Kathleen Sebelius and others could really benefit Ethan Corson. But if the election were held tomorrow, it would not surprise me if it fell along these lines. The other part to mention here is about half the people in this, 44%, were undecided still. So a lot of votes can still go in a number of ways.
And that's the point, is that, while Holscher has a plurality, there's a lot of space for, frankly, either Corson or Skoog to pass or by.
In the Senate side, there's, of course, 11 Democrats running for the nomination to challenge Roger Marshall. The front runner in this poll is Adam Hamilton, the pastor from Kansas City. He has 18%, which is actually a little bit lower, I think, than some people expected in this. Christy Davis has 10%. She's known for her rural development work in Kansas. I think maybe the first person to announce that she was going to run. And then State Senator Patrick Schmidt, Democrat from Topeka, he has 7%.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think this is fairly, for those of us who've been following these races closely, I don't think it's a tremendous surprise that it's breaking down like that. Christy Davis has been working very hard for a very long time in her race for this seat. So the fact that she's number 2, even though I think she's much less resourced than Adam Hamilton, is not a surprise. And likewise, Patrick Schmidt, he got some. I mean, it's largely a name recognition game at this point, right? And so even though Patrick Schmidt had some kind of faced some criticism online from some folks because of his attacks on Adam Hamilton over some allegations having to do with his church, it got Patrick Schmidt's name out there. And I think that's really what the game is about at this point.
The poll did show, I believe, a negative favorability rating for Patrick Schmidt, but he does have, I think, some name recognition as a state senator, also as the Democratic nominee for a congressional race for the 2nd District, going back 4 years, I think it was. So he's been around for a while in the political scene. The rest of these folks are largely newcomers for the political scene. As you say, Christy Davis, well liked and respected in a lot of rural parts of the state, across party lines even. But Adam Hamilton, his ability to raise a lot of money, he has built-in name recognition and support from running the church. There's a thought that he would be the one candidate who could really compete with Roger Marshall in the general election. Because of the name recognition, the money and the support that he would have, and I think his ability to appeal to moderate and independent voters. The challenge is whether he can appeal to progressive voters in the primary.
Sure, but ultimately, I think Democrats nationally have to make some challenging decisions as we head towards the Senate race, the overall race for the U.S. Senate this fall, because there's going to be a lot of potential seats that they could pick up. They don't have the resources to run hard for all of those races, so they're going to have to decide. I think for the folks in D.C., they would far prefer to have someone in Kansas who can raise his or her own money and who can run his or her own campaign.
Yeah, when I say he's the one who's most likely to be competitive in a general election, it's a lot of that has to do with whether people in D.C. are willing to spend money in Kansas. And given that the state hasn't elected a Democrat to the U.S. Senate since 1932, I think it would be difficult for them to get behind Patrick Schmidt or Christy Davis or Ann Perelker or Noah Taylor or, you go down the list. But I think Adam Hamilton could create enough excitement that they would invest in him, he would have his own money, and that would force Republicans to spend money on Roger Marshall.
One more election story from this past week. This is a story that's been unfolding for a while, but in Johnson County, some local activists and officials are upset because the county elections board is closing several early voting sites.
Yeah, this is Election Commissioner Connie Schmidt, one of the 4 who are appointed by the Secretary of State. Those are the 4 largest counties. Everybody else, it's the county treasurer conducts the elections. So this is an appointment of Scott Schwab as the Secretary of State running Johnson County elections. She's decided to remove 8 of the early voting sites in Johnson County. They happen to be in the areas of the county that are really dense in population. Some of this overlays with areas that are also the lowest income in the county. This is a concern for voting rights advocates because it looks like an attempt to dilute the vote there. She has opened 2 new places at the far borders of the county, up in the northwest and the south central edges of the county, which tend to be more rural and perhaps more conservative lined on the voting spectrum. This is happening in advance of the August primary, where we'll be curious to see if it has an impact on the turnout or the participation, but it could have an impact, of course, on the ballot question over whether to elect justices that's happening in August. Right now, there's a letter that 21 public officials have signed that's city level officials, county level officials, some state legislators, and U.S. Rep. Sharice Davids, urging the election commissioner to restore access to these voting sites for November. Freelancer Grace Hills wrote about this. She reported county commissioner saying, "We funded these sites to be open. It's not a money issue. She just decided to close them." And so, we'll see if it has an impact, but it seems unlikely.
I mean, to me,
unlikely to impact the decision to reopen them. Yeah.
Well, I mean, she just said that she told folks outright it's not going to change.
Yeah, it's unfortunate she would not answer Grace's questions for this story.
To me, I feel like when you look at kind of the position that Johnson County has in Kansas, it's one of the state's most populous counties. It's also one of the most blue trending counties. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the bluest county. That most likely is Douglas, Wyandotte at points. But Johnson County is trending very Democratic. And when you look at the high-profile races that are coming up this year, and to me, I think there's basically, we'll put the U.S. Senate race aside because that's kind of a marquee race that's kind of on a different level. I think the two highest-profile races in some ways are the amendment, the state constitutional amendment for selecting Supreme Court judges. That's going to be up during the primary election on August 4th. And then you're going to have the election for the next governor of the state. And each of these are contests that could ultimately be decided by a few thousand votes. Each of Laura Kelly's wins were fairly tight in retrospect. The anti-abortion amendment, the Value Them Both amendment, that was a very wide victory 4 years ago. That was unexpectedly so. I think folks are expecting this one to perhaps be a little tighter. So if you have these two very tight votes coming up, and you have this one county that is the one that is turning blue kind of most noticeably in Kansas, and it has the most people, the closure of these early voting sites, to me, it doesn't smell great.
It will have an impact. As Grace reported, these 8 sites accounted for 19% of the early votes 2 years ago.
And, again, there's no way to predict how people are actually going to behave. Obviously, people will, can go to other places. I believe that there's some more drop-off ballot boxes that have been added by Schmidt. So, it's difficult to know. But again, if you're talking about a situation where some of these races could theoretically be decided by just a few thousand votes, all of this stuff matters, right?
Yeah, I think it's telling too. There are places where it's like the bus would stop right in front of the library. You could go in and vote, so they got rid of that location. It's creating hurdles, whether that was the intention or not. It's imposing new barriers for people to actually get their ballots into the box.
And for me, and this is obviously something more from my opinion side of things, but it's one thing to contest an election based on, who do you think has the best ideas, what concepts do you support, what do you want to see happen in the state. I think it's really another thing to say that an election is just based on more or less who is allowed to vote, or who has the fewest barriers put up in front of them to vote. It really becomes a kind of a different question, and I think one it's much more challenging for me to put up with. Let's put it that way.
Let's move on to this week.
Indeed, and we've got something that speaking of things, we're talking about things that irritate me. Here's something that is gonna. I think it's perhaps something that irritates you a little bit.
Yeah, secret meetings do irritate me. We fight for transparency for the public interest here at Kansas Reflector. We've done a lot of stories rallying around the First Amendment. We mentioned earlier the documentary about the Marion County record raid. We were the first to report on that situation. What we're looking at this week was the decision to close most of the foster care, the Joint Foster Care Committee, Child Welfare Committee this week. We're fortunate we have such great staff. I feel like I have the best staff in the news business right now. We also get to work with really talented journalism students and recent graduates who are freelancers. Mentioned Grace earlier. KU student Maya Smith, no relation. She wrote about this foster care situation where the committee chair told her that they decided to make this a secret meeting so that they could invite foster care contractors in and talk about specific cases where I think things have gone well or not gone well, so they could look at what to do about that. The exemption that they're using to close this is appears to be applied very broadly. It's hard to imagine that everything they talk about behind closed doors would actually fall under the very limited excuse that they can use in state law to close this meeting. I'm very skeptical of that. And I just don't think that it's necessary to do your business in the dark this way. They could have generalized the names for these cases as they have done for years and years and years. This feels like a way to shield foster care providers and legislators from scrutiny from people who have routinely shown up at these meetings to make their voice heard, to say you're not doing a good enough job with foster care, which is an ongoing issue. It's been an issue for a long, long time. So we wrote about this already in advance of the meeting. We're going to cover the meeting. Tim Carpenter will be there, our senior reporter, to write about, again, why this is happening, who gets thrown out, what people say, what legislators are willing to say about what happened behind closed doors. Something we'll keep you informed about.
And it is a distressing trend. We've written about it, repeatedly in lots of different contexts here in Kansas, where more and more meetings that were previously open to the public, open to journalists, have been closed. And it's, this is not a small topic, right? I mean, this is something of great importance and great impact to Kansas. And the fact that it is being held behind closed doors is really, deeply, deeply concerning.
Yeah, particularly with this topic, we'll leave it there.
Well, yes, indeed. So we will keep track of that. And I will just add, as I always do, please subscribe to our newsletter at kansasreflector.com/subscribe. That's kansasreflector.com/subscribe, and you'll be able to keep up with all of these stories as we actually write them.
Our newsletter and all of the stories are free to read without advertising.
That's right. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week. My name's Clay Wirestone.
I'm Sherman Smith.
And peace out.